Piggyman 2004, and welcome to the first episode of the Piggyman Saga, in which we will be covering the Caretaker's first ever album, Selected Memories from the Haunted Ballroom. This review will cover about half of the album since it's almost an hour long, and I don't want to make my videos that long, so I decided to split things up for this and the other two albums in the Haunted Ballroom trilogy. Without further ado, this is Selected Memories from the Haunted Ballroom Part 1. Oh, and before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to ask you all that if you haven't heard this album in its entirety before, you definitely should. It's a very different experience from most music albums out there. And as I'll always do, I will link the original video and the bandcamp release so you can go support Layla James Kirby if you want. Alright, so without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Alright, so this first track, called very appropriately The Haunted Ballroom, immediately sets a tone and mood for the entire album. The descriptions for this album also immerse you in its world, like this one. The ballroom has been abandoned for many decades. It was once a place of luxury, beauty, and carefree joy. The halls long for the return of their patrons. Its floorboards creak painfully with the wind. In the main hall, smashed tables, chairs, and glasses get reclaimed by nature. A lone phonograph sits in the middle of the dance floor, playing a non-existent record, reminding all who pass through here of distant, happier times. Wow. If that ain't descriptive, I don't know what is. By the way, these first three albums made by the Caretaker were made because Kirby was a big fan of the 1980 cult classic film The Shining, which I highly recommend. In the movie, old dance hall music from the 1920s to 40s was used to set the tone of the Overlook Hotel in various scenes, so there's a little fun trivia for y'all. This next track, by Seaside, jolts you with an almost carnival-sounding track with static sprinkled in the background. Oh, and by the way, yes, I made all of these images by myself. I just thought it would be nice if there were visuals accompanying these creepy tracks with blurry backgrounds and the ever-so-present phonograph. This track makes me feel as if I was at a seaside carnival late at night, reminiscing of the good times I had with friends there. You'd think that by this point, all tracks would be eerie, but at least calm. But then you get stuff like this. Headphone warning, by the way. This abomination of a track is 1000 Memories. And if you thought by the Seaside jolted you with this static, this one just drags you on the floor with a garbled, incomprehensible mess that just makes this album run a million times more creepy. Kind of like the music equivalent of a jump scare. But enough of this track, it deeply disturbs both me and my eardrums, so let's just move on. Thankfully, this chaos gets abruptly cut by the next track, Haunting Me, which actually features lyrics. Sure, they are distant, echoey, and almost intangible, but you can still make out what Alan Kane is saying. Yeah, this is one of the few tracks in this album which sample has been found, which has the same name as this track. I chose this image because it fits perfectly with the audio echoing immensely off the grand walls of this theater that used to pack so many people in it, but now has been left to rot. Summer Romance continues a creepy trend of By the Seaside of featuring carnivalesque music, but now there's no white noise. This feels so happy and so desolated, kind of like the carnival depicted in the image. This album is all about loneliness, isolation, and nostalgia, which this track definitely 100% nails. And we're back with the nightmarish stuff. Den of Iniquity manages to be even more disturbing than 1000 Memories, but not by a whole lot. Sounds more like R2D2 having a seizure, but hey, that's just me. Fun fact about the sample used in this track. It was used in The Shining in some scenes where Jack was chasing Wendy around the Overlook Hotel, which is a cool little reference to the fact that this album is based on the movie. You might also notice that whenever these nightmarish tracks appear, I put a layer of static on top of the normal edited image. That's because this would not even qualify as music, it's basically just static noise. This is what I visualize when I try to think of something, but other things just keep clouding my thoughts, and I just end up trailing off. Dreamworlds breaks free from the chaos yet again, with the legendary Al Bali's voice occasionally peeking through reverberated saxophones and trombones. The original sample, Waltzing in a Dream, shares a similar name to this track, which makes sense, I guess. And I guess these relations have helped people find us samples of these tracks. This track overall makes me feel more like I'm waltzing into a nightmare. This next track, A Handful of Stars, makes me feel like if I was in a bathroom listening to the party going on in another room, with faint music echoing through the halls of the complex. This image also quite fits, as I picture myself in my truck, staring at the stars on a clear snowy night next to an eerie abandoned cabin, although I don't know why I would be doing that, with that dang phonograph echoing from the inside of said cabin. Other than that, it serves as a nice, relaxing track that you might be able to fall asleep to, if I'm completely honest. I can tell because I have. This track, Request Dance, falls more into the creepy yet repetitive side of the album. It's a simple set of notes for an unknown track, but it feels like a broken music box trying to play away while constantly messing up. Even though it's the shortest set of notes in the entire album, it still manages to be the longest track in the album, which is ironic to say the least. This is one of my favorite tracks because of just how simple yet moody it is. Boy, if I can tell you something, it's the tracks that have G-majored versions of themselves are indeed very creepy. In the Dark achieves that by overlapping Danny Dennis's voice with the process I just explained, creating a track that is almost normal, yet still has something that feels very off about it. And yes, the sample for this track has the same name as this track, which is fitting, as Dancing in the Dark would not be pleasant to say the least. Reckless Night sounds exactly how an episode of sleep paralysis or just plain old nightmares might seem to the person having them, which is why I put an image of a bed. The original sample, Reckless Night on Board an Ocean Liner, is a very upbeat and catchy tune, but this track manages to make it the entire opposite of that. If you really concentrate, you can still hear the remnants of the piano happily tinkering away. This track, Thronged with Ghosts, feels exactly like the title implies, being in a large group of ghosts. Yeah, you can now add throng to your vocabulary, thank you very much. Weird word aside, this track evokes a feeling of a ghost town, pun not at all intended, as you walk through the main street at night, wondering what the heck happened as to the whereabouts of all the residents and the livelihood of this seemingly normal city. And so we arrive at the end of this first part of 4 selected memories of the Haunted Ballroom. So far, it's been a blast just sharing my thoughts on this very obscure album that I believe more people should look into if you're into this kind of stuff. The Caretaker is a really interesting project, so if you like me sharing my dumb thoughts on this part of the album, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this. If you don't want to be spooked as much, make sure to also subscribe to my main channel, Piggyman 2004, which will also be in the description below. This is the Piggyman Saga, wishing you all a great rest of your day.